There we go. What is happening? It's Saturday. Why are we streaming on Saturday? This is super weird, right? Well, this is a bit of a special, out of order, out of the regular sequence stream, because it is actually a taster or a teaser class for the upcoming Old English course, Baby Steps to Beowulf. So, whether you're coming here because you're interested in Old English already, or if maybe I have a little bit of a job to do to convince you, hopefully we can do that today and convince you that Old English is a thing well worth your time in learning. This is going to be different from for those of you who have seen the other streams. It's going to be slightly different. We're going to be working through a little short text today in Old English. I'm going to be giving you some of the what, where, who, when, how, why of studying Old English, some tips. Even if you're not available for this course, you can hopefully use some of this stuff in your studies. And then we'll do some Q&A about the course itself, and I will send you on your way with a bit more Old English than perhaps you had before. So welcome everyone. Good to see some familiar faces on a Saturday. I know it's weird to see you on a day other than Tuesday or Thursday, but here we are. All right, so today's a bit of a shorter stream than normal. We're just going to be streaming for an hour, so I won't take a huge amount of time prattling on about this and that. I think it's time for us to talk a little bit about Old English, and then we'll talk a bit about hashtag Old English Summer. Do you still have to say the hashtag now? I feel like, I don't know, maybe I'm showing my age here. So I'll put in a little bit for YouTube, because we're going to take this little middle segment out where we're talking just about Old English. This could be useful to people who come across this in the future. So we'll make a little YouTube video out of it, and then we'll go back and we'll talk about specifics and logistics and that kind of stuff. So YouTube, welcome. If you have clicked on this video, you may have some small interest in Old English. And the job of this video is to take that small interest and make it bigger. If you already have a big interest, then maybe we can just add a little bit more onto it. But the big thing is, I want to get you excited about studying Old English, and I want to get you feeling like it's within your grasp. It's not going to be a mountain that's unclimbable. It's not going to be an insurmountable obstacle. It's not going to be a river that you can't cross. It's going to be something achievable. So here we go. We're going to talk about Old English. I don't think I even need to put myself in the corner to talk about Old English. This is a language. If you are not familiar, this is a language that is the ancestor of the language that I'm speaking to you in right now. So for those who have not studied the history of English, you may be under the impression that Old English is something like how Shakespeare spoke. It's actually quite a bit farther back than that. So if Shakespeare's English is, if we're speaking today present day English or modern English, Shakespeare would be speaking early modern English. So it's really more or less the same language as today. Then we have to go back into the Middle Ages. The later Middle Ages, we have Middle English, which is something like the language that Chaucer spoke. And then if we go further back, still 1,000 years ago, that's where we get to Old English. And so the language is actually quite different from modern English. It's not just a matter of putting thou and thy into it. But nevertheless, it does have a link with modern English, and it's a language that is fascinating to study because it's at once familiar and foreign. So to give you an idea of what this is like, I'm going to show you a little text. Now I'll put myself in the corner. And I'll show you a little text in Old English. This is a text that some of you may be familiar with. This is the Lord's Prayer, which in modern English starts off a little something like, Our Father who art in heaven. Depending on the translation, you get different things there, but it's this text. And so if I were to give this to you in Old English, it would be this, and I'll just read it out so you can get a sense of the sound of Old English. So, Fader ure, thu the art on heavenum, si thin nama je Hallowed, tobe kume thin riche, je wurde thin villa, on erdan swa on heavenum. Urne je dai hoamli chan hlav, sele us todai, and forgif us ure gyltas. Swa we forgivath urum gyltendum. And ne je lad thu us on kostnunge, ak alis us of yvele, soderliche. So, not entirely comprehensible, but there are some things that we can point to that are clear relatives of words that we know. So, father, fader. Let's see, let's get my mouse over here. Fader. You might recognize heavenum, right? This sounds a lot like heaven, and in fact, this is the ancestor of the word heaven. We have things like nama, name. Hallowed be thy name. This is the modern English, or the early modern English, I guess. Si thi nama je Hallowed. We have things like willa, for will. Erdan, which is a form of the word for earth. What else do we have here that's really obviously related? Yvele. Yvele, a form of the word for evil. So we have a few things that are kind of similar. Todai, today, right? We have some things that are similar, but then we have other things here like kostnunge, on kostnunge. What does that mean? This is not something that survived into modern English, so it's a bit hard for us to parse. Or a word like jedai hoamlich, here in the form jedai hoamlichan, which means daily. Obviously, we didn't get that full word passed down to us into modern English. So what I propose to do today is take you line by line through the Lord's Prayer, and show you these connections and the differences. And then I'll sketch out a kind of plan of attack if you want to study Old English, be it with a teacher, on your own, whatever, in a way that's going to be relatively pain-free and fun. Although your mileage on fun may vary depending on the sort of stuff you're into. But if you're into reading stuff like Beowulf, then you will find it very fun. All right. So, down we go. So line by line. Fader ure, thu the art on heavenum. Fader ure, father, our. So ure is also the direct ancestor of the word our, the first person plural possessive. Fader ure, here we have father our instead of our father, but more or less it's not so hard to see what's going on here. Thu the art on heavenum. thu. This thu is the second person singular pronoun, which gives us the modern English thou, not something we use a great deal. But you can see here a little something that you may have run into before called the great vowel shift, the effect of the great vowel shift. So here we have long u in ure and long u in thu. So long u in Old English is generally going to come down into modern English as ow. So ure, our. Thu, thou. There are a few other changes between those words, but this is a good way to get started when you see an Old English word and you're thinking, okay, what's going on here? If you see a long oo, try putting it into modern English with an ow sound, and you're often going to be on track. Righty. Thu, the. The here is a relative marker, so you who are, thu the art, thou who art. You know, if you want to put it into a more literal word translation, but for the meaning, you who are on heavenum, in heaven. So let's go a little bit slower. Art, this is a form of the verb to be, the second person singular. Thu art, which gives us modern English, thou art. Again, not something that in standard English is used a lot, but it does come up. Also gratuitous. Got to show that. No, let's put that full screen so you can see. I have the best friends. This was a gift. Whatever. All right, so let's go back. We had on heavenum. On is in the West Saxon dialect the preposition that we often use in the place of in. So interestingly, modern English does not descend from West Saxon, modern English does not descend from West Saxon. It descends from a different dialect of Old English. So when I say that Old English is the ancestor of modern English, there's some sort of asterisk that has to be put next to that. But because we don't say on heaven, we say in heaven, and in wasn't really used very much in West Saxon, which is the dialect that we study when we study Old English traditionally, which is kind of like the standard language at the time. So, Fader ure thu the art on heavenum. Our Father, you who are in heaven, would be the modern English translation. All right. So, first line, not so bad. Obviously, there's some new stuff here, but almost all of these words have reflexes in modern English. Father, our, thou, the is not used as a relativizer anymore, but with that aside, thou, who art on heaven, not so far off. I think it's borderline comprehensible. All right, next. Si thin nama Hallowed. So, hallowed be thy name. This is the usual translation into modern English, or at least it's the one I'm most familiar with. But if we're to take this literally, this is something like we have a subjunctive form of the verb to be, si, which means something like, in this case, may it be, let it be. Si thin nama, your name, or thin is of course thin is the ancestor of thy or thine. It's interesting. We talked about if I go back, we talked about the fate of these long oo vowels in modern English. They turn to ow because of the great vowel shift. And the long e vowels likewise turn into I a lot of the time in modern English. This is the regular outcome of long e in Old English is I in modern English. So thine. Si thin nama Hallowed. I should probably say something about this IE diphthong. This is a bit unclear. The pronunciation of this diphthong is a bit unclear, or rather debated. It's only found in very few texts, and it's sort of, if you're learning Old English, it's often put in the version of Old English that you learn because it's easiest to go from this standard, which is early West Saxon, which has this IE diphthong, to other varieties. It's easier to go from early West Saxon to others than it is to go from others to early West Saxon. So my convention is to pronounce it like E, but it does show up as U in other varieties. So si thin nama Hallowed may be your name, thin nama name, right? Hallowed. So this is an inflected form of the verb hallrian, which means to make holy, to make something holy. Holy is the Old English word for holy, so Hallrian, you can sort of see it's smushed together in there, to make something holy. And this is where we get the word hallowed from, or hallow, like in the Deathly Hallows or Halloween. So si thin nama Hallowed, may your name be made holy. All right. Tobekume thin riche. Tobekume thin riche. Tobekume is another subjunctive form. I'm going to cut some of this. I got to move myself. There we go. Is another subjunctive form. So you saw above we have si, a subjunctive form of to be. This is giving us this sense of may it be so, such and such. May it be like so. And so here we have tobekume, which is another subjunctive form, meaning may something approach. May what approach? Or draw near. So this, you can sort of see the root that gives us become in this. So may what draw near? Thin riche, your kingdom, thy kingdom. Riche is going to be cognate with. We don't have anything in modern English that descends from riche, but this is the kind of thing that you get like in German Reich. So this is kingdom. It comes from a root meaning sort of area of authority or dominion. So tobekume thin riche. May your kingdom come. Here we have another subjunctive clause. Jewurde thin willa. Jewurde thin willa. This is the verb werdan in Old English, giving us, by the way, I don't know if I've mentioned explicitly, but this character here, which is called thorn, is pronounced th or the, depending on its position in the word. Jewurde thin willa. Werdan can mean become, or it can mean to come to pass, to happen. So jewurde thin willa, may your will, thin willa, giving us will, come to pass or to happen. Thy will be done. You'll often hear it rendered into, or you'll hear the the modern English version anyway, early modern English version. Jewurde thin willa. So what happens is th, and actually all fricatives are voiced between vowels or sonorants. So jewurde, so R is a sonorant. Jewurde thin willa. Yes. All right. So yeah, that is the King James version. Thy will be done. And where is thy will going to be done? On earthen swa on heavenum. On earthen swa on heavenum. So this has a slightly different structure than the modern English. Some stuff to comment on. So on earthen, on earth. Okay, nothing super interesting there, other than the fact that that we have an N on the end of the word for earth, and this is simply a fact of the. This is simply owing to the fact that it's the object of on. A little bit of an aside, pedagogically speaking, I don't really like to emphasize people studying, tables of endings and things. Rather, I like to just expose people to more and more of these patterns and then watch them get built up by your own minds, which are really good at picking up on these patterns. So just I've put it in a different color here so that you notice that something's going on there, but we don't have to worry about the specifics too much. So on earthan swa swa on heavenum. On earth swa swa. This is on. So swa is the word that gives us so in modern English. Another little trick along a, this aw sound is going to often go into o in modern English. So swo or so is the reflex of swa. I think we had one earlier as well, didn't we? Maybe we didn't. Oh yeah. It doesn't happen here though, so never mind. Yeah, for every rule there's an exception, right? It does happen in the word holly, meaning holy, which has a long a in Old English. Right, so on earthan swa swa on heavenum. On earth as swa swa. This is not, we don't say on earth so in heaven in modern English, but this was the way that you expressed as or like in Old English, either just with swa or by swa repeated. So swa swa, which kind of sounds cool. And I'm reminded of swa from the Tokipona Ruinlex stream. Nevertheless, on heavenum, we've seen this before, in heaven. Okay. Oh yeah, that should say earth. There we go. Thank you, Max, for the correction. Okay, this is a fun one. Urne jedai hoam lichan hlaf, sele us todai. All right, so translation: give us today our daily bread. Although if we were to put it in the Old English word order, it would be our daily bread, give us today. So this urne jedai hoam lichan hlaf is one phrase. Urne, this is a different form, the accusative singular form, masculine, if you are curious, but I would encourage you not to be too curious at this point, of that ure, which we had before, which gave us our. So urne jedai hoam lichan, daily, and you can see in here, I don't know if you can see dai. So this G, we have D and then this AE ligature, which is just like the IPA, and then we have this G with a dot on it. And it's worth talking about this G with a dot on it, which I'm pronouncing yeah. It was certainly pronounced yeah. The reason that we put a little dot on it is to indicate that this is the kind of G that's pronounced yeah. So we have ye dai huamli chan. Similarly, we put its dot on top of the C to indicate that it was pronounced ch. This has to do with the sound changes in the history of English, going back before the time it was written down, where you have the C's and G's get palatalized, kind of like what happened in French, Italian, and Spanish. It's the story of g, k, those velar sounds in languages. Whenever they're next to front vowels, they love to just go into j or ch or ts or j or y in this case. So you can treat it as a y, a yod, or like a y sound. So yedai huamli chan. Yedai huamli chan. Day. So we even have that y persisting into modern English. Yedai huamli chan. Daily. That's interesting. It's also interesting that we have this suffix huam on here, which comes from the same root as whom. Here it means kind of like every, and it's a bit, to me at least, mysterious, the relationship between whom and every. Although it is notable that Yahweh has the same root and it means every. Nevertheless, that's kind of interesting. But I think what's more interesting is hlaf. Hlaf is a word for bread, but this is the ancestor of loaf. So urne yedai huamli chan hlaf, our daily loaf, literally speaking, but our daily bread. Hlaf is a great word because it gives us so many other, or I guess there's a few other interesting words. One is hlavord, which is the ancestor of modern English lord. So hlavord is literally the guard, the ward of the hlaf, the loaf. So the person who's guarding the loaf is the lord. And, that's a very important function for someone to occupy. You got to keep the loaves safe, right? And Harmonica has a quick question: that the digraph got flipped? Which digraph are you talking about there? While you answer that, I'll talk a little bit about sele. Sele is from the verb sellan, which means not to sell, but to give. So the original meaning of this verb, which comes down into modern English as sell, was give. Or actually, sometimes it could also have the meaning of to like betray someone. So you think of calling someone a sellout, right? This is actually a very, very old meaning of the word sell, which meant just neutrally to give or to give someone over, as in to betray them. Here, there's no connotation of betrayal. It just means give. So urne jedai homni chan hlav sele. So give our daily bread. Give our daily bread to whom? Us, sele us. Give us our daily bread. So this is another form of the first person plural pronoun. Here, of course, I say of course because every rule has an exception. Our long vowel u doesn't turn into aus. It comes down to modern English as us. The HW digraph. I believe that has to do with the influence of new standards of orthography that were brought in with the Norman scribes in the Middle English period. What, HW, is how it was written in Old English, and then it turns into a WH later on. There are a lot of things like that where a different scribal tradition came in, namely the Norman tradition. People trained in France replaced the people who were trained in England, the scribes, and so a lot of so we lost our thorn. Where was that again? Yeah, here, our good friend. This gets turned into a th by those self-same scribes. Yes. Okay. So sele us todai. Todai, today. So here we have that dai root as well, meaning day. Culiulio. What else? And forgif us ure gultas. And forgif us ure gultas. So and, no mystery there. Forgif, this is a bit of an interesting word because it looks very, very plainly like forgive, but notice that g, we didn't inherit a palatalized form of that. We don't say forgive in modern English. We say forgive. And this has to do either with, there are two sort of interesting reasons why this might be the case. One is that not all Old English varieties participated in this palatalization, especially the more northerly varieties. And so you have the varieties of Old English ancestral to Scots, which don't have church, but have kirk, because that k to ch palatalization didn't happen there. So that could be a cause. And the other thing that could be a cause is, at a certain point, there were a lot of Scandinavians in England due to the whole sort of Viking era scene. And over large parts of England, you had people speaking Old Norse, and you had a lot of contact between Old Norse speakers and Old English speakers. And as a result, a lot of words in Old English, or a lot of words in modern English, come not from the Old English form of the word, but from the Old Norse form of the word, or a version of the Old English that's kind of influenced by the Old Norse. So it doesn't have that palatalization, because in fact, Old Norse did not have that palatalization. So yes, we have give instead of yiv, but we still have yield which was from Gildan, to pay, or to pay, to give tribute. Anyway, so that's forgiv. Forgiv us ure gyltas. So we've seen us before. We've seen ure before. Forgive us our gyltas. What are gyltas? This is the ancestor of the modern English word guilt. But it's more broad in Old English than just guilts. Forgive us our guilts. This could be debts, offenses, crimes, sins, any of these things. I've said offenses here because it's going to play nicely with the line that follows. On the forgiv us ure gyltas, and this is the front rounded vowel y. I see some excellent history of English orthography stuff going on in the chat. Very good. All right, and here's our swa again. Swa we forgivath urum gyltendum. So swa as, we've seen this before. We, here's another great vowel shift freebie. So we have the long the long e sound. And this comes into modern English as e, this e sound. I mean, there is a reason that we call this letter here, e and not e in modern English, just for the same reason. So we becomes we. So swa we forgivath, as we forgivan, forgive. Could also mean grant or give, but not in this case. As we forgive, who do we forgive? Urum gyltendum. So urum is another form of that ure, our. Gyltendum. What is this? This is a form of the verb, of a verb meaning to be in, to sin, to offend, to be in debt. So these are the ones who are in debt, or the ones who offend. We forgive the ones who offend. Yeah, the archaic participial form of the verb. So we in modern English we use ing with the velar nasal here, but originally it was und. So if I were to sort of mechanically try and bring this forward into modern English, it would be our giltons. This I and apostrophe ending is the descendant of this end. And so that's gyltendum, as we forgive our offenders, as we forgive those who trespass against us, I think would be the KJV. I remember that from school. But here there's no circumlocution about, people offending against us. It's our urum gyltendum, our offenders, or our debtors. That also works. What's next? And ne gelad thu us on kostnunge. Okay, and ne gelad, lead. So this long often comes into modern English as this ea digraph, which gets pronounced in different ways according to a very complicated history, either a or e, most of the time e. So yelad becomes lead. Interestingly, this little prefix we've seen this before a few times. A lot of the time this just drops out into modern English. In some cases we do keep it it just turns into a little schwa in some words, but in the case of yelad, it just drops out altogether. So and ne yelad thu, and not lead thou, literally, if we do word for word, but more idiomatically, and don't lead, do not lead. We don't have this do support in Old English that we have in modern English. And do not lead us on kostnunge. What is kostnung? Kostnung is temptation. This is a word that we have in modern English, which for those who have a taste for these things and a sense for these things can recognize this as a French or Latin loan, temptation. The giveaway is the Asian. The native Old English word was kostnung, which does not survive, but it comes from an old Germanic root meaning to test or tempt. And neje lad thu us on kostnunge. Ak alis us of yvele. Sodliche. Okay. Ak is but. We have not we've not kept ak around, sadly. Next we have alis, which means to deliver, to release, or redeem. You can note that there's a connection to the root, which gives us loosen. So, if you're releasing someone from something, you could think about loosening their fetters and allowing them to go free. So, alis us, deliver us, of, in Old English, of more generally meant from. So not just the way we would think of it in modern English as of. Possession, in fact, they had a whole genitive case to deal with that, but it's often used in the sense of from. So ac alis us of yvele. Yvele, this is evil, right? Just spelt a bit differently. You can see the allophonic voicing of f. So whenever you have a voiceless fricative in between two vowels or a sonorant and a vowel, it'll get voiced. Just like we saw with erdan, we have yvele, not yfele. And so this gives us evil. Yeah, and so this, if I were consistent with my my little system here, I would attempt to copy and paste on a Windows machine. It's not easy. Evil. There we go. Thank you, Max. And then we only have one word left and we're finished. Sodliche. Sodliche. This is the word that they used for amen in Old English. Literally, it means truly or indeed. So sodliche, you can recognize, for those who like some of the more old-timey Renaissance fair style language, the word forsooth, which means in truth. So sooth is the modern English descendant of soth, soth meaning truth. So sodliche is truly, but in this case it's used as amen. And now that's the whole thing. We went through, it looks a bit, daunting perhaps. Let's go back up to the start so we can survey what we've done. It may look a bit daunting, but actually when you go through it line by line, it's not actually that bad. There are a lot of things that are familiar that are maybe hidden by the orthography. So like yvele, right? This is evil, which we would expect knowing the modern English equivalent, and deliver us from evil. So that is hopefully a little bit of a taste of what it's like to start reading in Old English. Now, obviously, I'll come back to the full screen webcam. Obviously, there's there's stuff to learn, right? There's vocabulary, there's grammar, but my philosophy is that the more you read, the more that stuff will just start to get into your head. So my advice for those who are considering embarking on Old English, whether it's with me or whether it's on your own or with someone else, is to try to optimize for the amount of time you spend actually reading the language. What we've done today is kind of the equivalent of going through a text with a dictionary. And this is a good way to get started when there really aren't a ton of resources for being able to read widely in Old English. There aren't a lot of texts yet that are made for learners. So what you have to do is sort of jump into the deep end and start reading texts that you're interested in. There's a reason, after all, presumably, that you want to learn the language. You want to read some texts. Maybe you want to read Beowulf. That was certainly my goal when I started. And so I just sat down with a dictionary and started going through it. And it was tough going at first because, it's poetry and it's, there's all sorts of stuff going on. There's all sorts of endings, all sorts of vocabulary I don't know. But as I keep doing it, as I keep reading more and more of it, my mind starts building up a little bit of a model of how Old English works. And then the more I read, the more that model gets built. And the same is true. The same will happen for you when you start to read widely in Old English. So my goal in teaching beginners Old English at this point, because we don't have the pedagogical texts available, we have to sort of figure out a way of getting people reading Old English as soon as possible. So shorten the time from I know nothing about Old English to I have a trusty dictionary in my hand, I can make my way through any text. And that's what I aim to do with this upcoming course that's starting next week. But I think what I'll do is open the floor to questions. I'll say goodbye to YouTube first. YouTube, thank you for joining us. If you've been watching this in the far distant future, hopefully you've got some inspiration and an idea of what Old English is like, and a sense that you have the ability to accomplish the goal of reading Old English yourself. Even if you need a dictionary, you can do it. So go forth and read Old English, and we will see you again. But chat, I'm not leaving you yet. I would like to sort of open the floor up for questions. I saw some come in during my little spiel, so I'll try and get to as many of those as I can. And if you have any more, just put them in the chat. The prefix. So Enharmonica asks, is the yeah prefix the same as the German equivalent g? Yes, it is. That is cognate. So yeah and the German g are cognates. Yeah, Old English stories for beginners, if only. Well, watch this space. That's all I have to say. I won't say any more. Where does this rendering of the text come from? This is an original text. So this was found in an Old English manuscript. I have go off to the side again. I have regularized it a bit to make it conform with the early West Saxon sort of idealized form of Old English that I think it's good for people to start with when they're learning. There are kind of arguments on both sides. Some people say, no, that's not the way anyone actually wrote. You should give them the text as is. But you know what? I find you got a lot on your plate when you're picking up a new language. You don't need to worry about scribal variations in spelling and dialect variations and things like that. I like to give a bit of an idealized version. And then when someone gets to a point where they're confident and they're able to read nice and fluently in that idealized version, then to sort of unleash the complexity that is there in the real world. So that's the idea. Let's see, question. Does the Old English ach turn into the Scottish expression ach? I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't know off the top of my head that it doesn't, but I don't think that the k turns into ch in English. The dodgy G. Yeah, so that's another editorial decision. So going back here, you're not going to find these dots on the top of G and C. Oh, wait, you don't see my cursor. You're not going to find these dots on the top of G and where's C? Yeah, C in manuscripts. This is purely for the benefit of readers. Similarly, the long vowel markers. This is an editorial edition. You'll find them in texts for learners, but you won't find them in the manuscripts themselves. So yeah, count your blessings while that you have dotted and macroned texts. This is like as Max said, this is a kind of a modernized Old English orthography. Let's see. Go back to the and forgive. Yes, yeah. So Galactic Sand points out the New King James Version has "and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors." Gal asked, and sorry, I don't have the context for this. Is it related to Yiddish Geld? Yuldan? Yes, it would be. So to pay Geld would be something that is paid. So those are those are cognates. There are actually some really cool things. If you know in other Germanic languages, when you look at Old English, go back out to the side. You look at Old English, you'll see tons of things, many more than you see as a speaker of modern English. Trying to see if there's anything good in here. Jewurde. So this word verdan, this verb, doesn't survive into modern English. It would have come down as a word worth, a verb meaning pronounced worth, meaning become or happen. There's actually an archaic expression, woe worth so and so. So it's like woe betide them. But other than that, we don't have werden in modern English. But you do have it in German and Yiddish, for example. Werden and wern in German and Yiddish, respectively. Yeah. Sawton points out one English dialect kept as you can see it in a few words. You do see. Oops, where are we? Let's see if I can grab an example for you. See if I can find an example. So this in Middle English, you'll see this this GE prefix showing up as Y. If you are looking in Middle English. Let's see. Things like I'm trying to think of things like, I don't know if it's the in nowadays. I think it might be. I'm blanking on some examples here. Never think at the blackboard, so to speak. Have I ever thought about hypothetical modern English words? Yeah, a lot. This is the kind of thing I do think about. So yeah, worth would be a good example. Instead of saying, if we were to make the passive in modern English like German does, you would say, he worth. You could say he worth born in such and such a place. That would be kind of cool. Yeah, there are lots of other ones like. I'm trying to think of a good example of a word that doesn't survive. Well, like Kostnung, temptation would turn into something like kostning or something. Like kostning, I think we pronounce sort of like listening. You don't pronounce the T in between the S and N. So kostning, I think, would be. People have done whole projects on this. They call it Anglish. It's a form of English that's sort of only Germanic. It doesn't have any of the loan words from Romance. So yeah, those are fun. There's a famous essay, well, famous is maybe a stretch, but called Uncleftish Beholding, which I think that's the title, which it's about like nuclear physics in English. So to try and write a scientific paper, I forget who wrote it. It's someone more or less famous. Yeah, kind of fun. So, oops, almost got to protect the mug. Right. Thanks, Ship. So this course, this is going to start at this time of day. So it's going to go 1 to 3 Eastern, starting next weekend. Run for 8 weeks, and the premise is that we're going to take a new text every week. So not this one. This one's already been seen. We're going to take new texts every week. We're going to read small segments of Old English. You're going to get some practice with this method of reading with a dictionary. And I'm going to introduce the grammar that you need in order to read. So these are going to be things like, how do I look up what form to look in the dictionary? Because if you look at, say, a word like Jewurde, if you go to the dictionary under G, you're not going to find this. You're going to need to go to W, werdan. So the kind of tricks that let you transform what you see on the page to what you should look up in the dictionary, and what these little endings mean for your interpretation of the text, those are going to be touched on. It's not going to be a grammar heavy course. It's going to be a reading heavy course. So I'm going to shovel Old English in as much as possible. And so you'll learn about 300 words of Old English. I think it's a good initial hoard for you, a good word hoard for you to start out with as you start to read Old English on your own. You will have encountered these words enough that you will likely not need a dictionary for them, and that gives you a good handle on comprehensibility of new texts. And so we're going to climb this Old English mountain using texts from the Old English Gospels. So these are translations. These are sort of gospel stories from like the book of Matthew. The reason I chose these is that the language is fairly straightforward. There's a lot of repetition, a lot of things like the first person did so-and-so, the second person did this, that, and the other, and the third person did something else. So you see this repetition, which really helps get, these repetitions help the words sort of stick in the mind. And some of the text may be familiar to some of you, so that will also help if that's the case. There are also readily available translations into whatever language you want. So that also helps with the comprehensibility when you have a modern English version or whatever language you want to read it in alongside. And then once we've got our feet wet with that in the first 7 weeks, then we open up Beowulf and you'll get your first crack at translating Old English poetry. And that, to me, is the big reward for going through easier prose. You will then get to start with poetry. And the approach that I take with teaching the poetry is we start off by translating the poetry into prose. So taking out the very, very complicated or the very, very rare poetic vocabulary, getting the sentence structure back into sort of standard prose order. Then you read it like it's prose. You understand what's going on. And then we take that and we put it back into poetry. And then you're just close enough to comprehension by having read the prose portion that when the poetry comes and things are in weird positions in the line, I don't know what happened with my voice there, weird positions in the line, and things are displaced for metrical reasons or for some effect, you're able to handle it. And then by the end of this course, you will have read your first, however many lines, I forget exactly how many we're going to do, your first selection of Beowulf. And you're going to be in a position where you have that dictionary in hand, and you won't even need it in hand because it's all been digitized too, for free. You can just go forward and actually start to read this literature in the original, which means that you get to pay attention to things like the metrical qualities, the rhyme or lack thereof, the alliteration. That's important in Old English poetry. That's actually crucial in Old English poetry. Rhyme is a much smaller secondary role. The specific imagery, the wordplay, there's some really good stuff. And Beowulf, for those of you who don't know, is an extremely sophisticated poem. And the things that the Beowulf poet does, they will knock your socks off. So it's a real pleasure to be able to read that without a translator in between you and the text. And so my goal is to sort of get as many people into the club who can do that as possible, as quickly as possible, and in as fun a way as possible. So that's the gist. I'm going to look back at the chat now and see if there are any more questions. Yeah, there's also there is the opposite of English, which I think it's called Anglese, where it's basically, what if Norman French completely supplanted completely supplanted Old English, and modern English were just descended from the variety of French spoken in England. That's kind of fun. Well, if you're memeing about English, that's I think I've done my job if I've planted the seeds of memeing about English. Yeah, so that's the idea. Logistically, the course that starts next week, if you are curious, it costs $150 for those who aren't InterIntellect members. So it's run through this platform InterIntellect. So it's $150 for people who aren't members, $125 for people who are. It's 8 weeks, 2 hours of class a week. What else? It's the classes are recorded and shared with the group privately. So if you miss a class, or if you have to run, or the power gets cut or something like that, you can go and review afterwards. Reading heavy. If you by the way, on the question of price, I had some people ask about this. If you're in a position where price is going to keep you from studying Old English, we can't have that, right? So if you have financial need or some special circumstances like that, let me know, and there are scholarship positions available. So it's all good. You don't let a thing like money stop you from studying Old English, because it's very, very fun. Are there any texts in Old English other than the Bible which are important or prominent? So I guess the question is sort of prominent for whom? Prominent for us, Beowulf. Beowulf is the big one. Other poems like The Wanderer, The Seafarer. There's also the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. There's a lot of... So one of the things that I think a lot of people don't know about Old English is that it's very, very, very well tested for an ancient language. Using the term ancient loosely, but we have a lot of Old English and a very wide diversity of texts. So we have prose, we have poetry, we have religious, we have secular, we have narrative history, we have technical works on like grammar and medicine, we have legal texts, we have riddles. There's a lot of Old English out there. So it's not as if you're studying a language that will allow you to read, 5 poems and that's it. There's quite a bit out there. There's also the, this is a really cool one, the Genesis, 2 Genesis poems, Genesis A and B, which you can sort of think of together, which are a retelling of the book of Genesis, or at least part, in Germanic, like as a Germanic alliterative heroic poem, which is so cool. I don't know. I'm nerding out thinking about it because it's like the ultimate mashup. And there are things like that. There are things like that you get to participate in when you get into Old English. Yeah. So anyway, that's the gist. That's what I want to talk to you all about today. Is this little project of mine, this course, Baby Steps to Beowulf. If you're interested in taking part, the link is in the description to sign up or to get more info. I've been working on it for quite a few months, and it's a brand new curriculum to sort of get people up and running with reading Old English. And I'm really excited to spend the summer doing it. And hopefully I can spend the summer doing it with some of you. That would be delightful. Romke is delineating some of the interesting phenomena that have happened in this community. Yeah. So if you are watching this stream and you're not familiar with the YouTube channel or the Twitch stream that we do, every week we meet up for twice a week, usually Tuesdays and Thursdays in the afternoon, Eastern time, 2 to 4 p.m. And we make constructed languages. We talk about linguistics. We have fun with world building and language learning and all sorts of stuff like that. It's we have a great community centered all around language and apparently memes as well. And we all hang out in Discord, and the link for that is also in the description. So If you've come for Old English and you're also curious about that other stuff, do check it out. I think you may find some things that that will make you smile, or maybe even make you think. Max says, imagine Old English being taught in schools like Latin and Greek. Oh, yes. Yes. I want to say I'm doing more than imagining it. But I'll say I'm imagining it real hard. All right. Well, I only laid claim to 1 hour of your time today. So I'll probably wrap up the stream unless there are any more questions that anyone has about Old English or really anything else. Kind of fun to hang out on a different day than normal. It's we're going to be doing more of these now that we have Patreon up. Subtle plug, link description again. We're going to be running series of for people at a certain tier on Patreon. We're going to be running special events where we do interviews with linguists, special like collaborative projects for people in the community, stuff like that. And those will be at different times so that we can get people who are not just around during the usual Tuesday to Thursday afternoon. So that will be starting up shortly. Yeah. Okay. All right. No questions. Then I will bid you a very happy weekend. It's beautiful weather here, so I'm eager to go outside and enjoy the sun with a suitable large amount of sunscreen on, because that'd be disaster. Thank you all so much, and whatever you do, have a good one until the next stream, which will be on Tuesday afternoon, where we are going to have a tone explosion with a special guest. I won't say any more about that. All right. We will see you next time.